Hi everybody, and welcome to episode 105 of the iRock Knits podcast. My name is Cori Eichelberger, and I go by iRock Knits on the internet. And iRock is just Cori spelled backwards, I-R-O-C. There are not two Ks. It's often misspelled in hashtags and when people are writing to me. Just I-R-O-C and then knits. And if you've been around for a long time, the whole thing spelled backwards is stink, Cori. So there you go, a little bit of laugh for the day. I have a lot to share with you today. It's Sunday afternoon. I have a couple of things to do tomorrow. I have book club starting back up. And so I'm going to try to get this edited tonight because I have an invitation to go knit with someone tomorrow evening. And I'm going to try to make that happen. Podcast days are usually really just full because I do show notes and I upload and put them out on Ravelry, and then I update the lists of the recipes and the books and the sweaters and the shawls. So there's lists out there. So if you need to go and look back at all the shawls I've ever talked about, or all the sweaters I've ever talked about, there's a list for you. All the books I've ever talked about, all the recipes, you can print that stuff out. I'm not sure that anybody ever accesses it, but for me, it is nice to have a list because then I can reference whether or not I've talked about a sweater or not before, which I just did today. All right, what am I wearing today? I finished my Ranunculus. I was really late to jump on the wagon for this. I just did not like the original design. When it was first published, it was written as a one-size pattern, and it was just so open. And when you're a knitter from long ago, there was a sense of pride and in your work, but in your stitches. And so I have a hard time with sloppy stitches. I see designers on Instagram all the time, and I think, take that picture over, tighten up that stitch, fix that. Like, I'm not a perfectionist in my knitting, but I can't handle sloppy. And that sweater in its like mohair and the giant needle was just like a big net poncho. And then it was modeled on these tiny young girls, and it's very fashionable. If you are under 25, probably, right up your alley. But for me, I was just like, that would just look so sloppy on me. And the stitches looked fairly uneven. She has rewritten the pattern to include multiple sizes now. She's got video tutorials, support tutorials for all parts of it. But it has like 14,000 patterns on Ravelry. And so I thought, what am I missing? Like, why is this just, and I think it's because people could get it off the needle so quickly. So it was not intimidating. Cody is saying hello, he's panting over here. It was just not intimidating for people because it was just a quick knit, and people have knit 3 and 4 and 5 of them. So I finally saw one that I loved. I saw this woman, I think she is from, I should give her better credit than that. I want to say she's not from the US, but anyway. And she knit it in this yarn, in this color. And the picture has a hat. I've showed it. Anyway, I just decided I needed to do it in that yarn and that color. So I also ordered this yarn in an orange, but it came and it was kind of a sherbet orange, it was okay, but it was a little paler. And the original lady that knit this in kind of a stone color. So it was just off, it's like a pewter, and I just did the high contrast cream. But that meant that this knit was a constant recalculation of numbers to figure out how to make it work. And she had knit 4 of them. So she knit a couple for herself in the bigger gauge, and then she knit one for her mother, and her mother wanted another one. So this is number 4 for her. On number 4, it said, did the same thing as number 2. So then you have to scroll through all of her projects and find the number 2 to see what the notes were. So then I printed out the notes from her and from a couple of other people that did a different gauge. So I wrote out everything. I wrote everything I did for this. The gauge is completely different. I knitted on a size 8. This is an unspun cotton. It's Cleckheaton Nourish yarn, very difficult to find. I had to order it from Australia. It is available. It did not cost me to have it shipped, and it came quite quickly. But the carbon footprint of getting yarn from Australia makes me a little like, really? But it is so soft. It's so lovely. I'm hoping it doesn't pill because of that kind of unspun texture of the cotton. Well, I'll have to see how it wears under the arms. I did make the arms. The arms are just meant to be kind of cast off up here, and I followed kind of what the other person did. I just had to do numbers. So, and everything worked at my gauge for my body and my bust. And then I knit it. It said you only knit for 4 inches and then you cast off. So you have like 4 inches right here and you cast off. And I was like, okay, it's supposed to be cropped. You're supposed to wear it with these, you know, high-waisted dresses or pants or whatever. Well, I tried it on and it didn't cover the girls. 4 inches territorially on a larger bust. And I don't have a huge bust, right? I have a larger bust, you know, anyway, we don't need to talk bust sizes, but like anybody who even had a bigger bust than I do, would need more fabric, right? And so then when I tried it on, I was like, it only came to like right here, and I had blocked it now. So, and I have a pink dress underneath it, so you can kind of see the pink through there. But anyway, I love it. Now I'm thinking I will cast on the orange one. It did work up quickly had I not had to stop and like check numbers. I don't know how many times I put it on, tried on tubing, because I was just unsure about whether or not it was going to fit, because all I had was this little picture and a few notes from this woman. And I did kind of want it oversized, but I didn't know like how big this cropped circumference should be. Like how many stitches it's going to be. It could be tighter here. I could have gone back in a little bit. Anyway, so it turned out, I'll put pictures in.
See, I really like my sweater, but I think you wear it better. You can keep a little piece of me.
One of my first Instagram reels. They're really pushing everybody to do video. And I talked to some people who said, you have to do a couple, Cori. It pushes you up in the algorithm and new people see you. And my numbers on Instagram haven't changed in years. They just fluctuate between, I don't know. I would really, back in the day, I was really pushing for that 10,000 mark, because then you got to do all kinds of different things on Instagram, and now that's not even an issue. So I don't really push anymore. But if you kind of want people to see your designs, then you need to have more eyes on your work on Instagram. So I was like, okay, I will do a reel. And, there's a learning curve and I'll get better at it. And I just don't want to do the silly stuff, that's really silly. So it's shawl timber. So I think I'll show some of my shawls and put them to music and just do that to get started till I learn the editing of it. Anyway, so Ranunculus by Midori Hirose or Hirose. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name for sure. But yeah, I would recommend it now that I've knit it. This is a fun stitch, very interesting. I did watch the tutorial, just make sure I was doing it right. And then this is just eyelets, and then you do that stitch again. And then the gal that I followed had this corrugated ribbon here, which was a point of contention because corrugated rib usually draws in. It's going to make things tighter, and then that's going to be almost at the widest part of where I'm headed and around my shoulders. So I needed to make sure that I went up a needle size on that or knit it right loosely so that the transition for colors would be better. And I do like it better than if I had just changed and just done white with a pink line. So I may even do this in orange, but put some orange and white right there. Thought that might kind of be fun. And then I could do a little bit 3/4 length sleeves or something. I didn't buy enough yarn for that, so I'll have to get more yarn. But anyway, that's what I'm wearing today. I've been wearing it for 3 days. I keep putting it on when we go places, and I haven't had a sweater done for myself in a long time, and I have so many sweaters on the needles. It's ridiculous. And why this one jumped to the front, I'm not really sure. We're gonna do the audiobooks at the end again. Gosh, I'm just itchy today. My head has been itching I have an itch. I think lots of people have this because people talk about it, but sometimes I just itch. Anyway, I'll try not to itch myself. Let's do the recipe of the week. I have 2 for you today. The first one is sheet pan hot honey mustard chicken and crispy Brussels sprouts. We are having this. I have not made it yet. I don't think it will be too difficult. You just put it all on a sheet pan. But I love hot honey chicken, and I like the fact that I'm going to be able to control my own spice on this. So it's just breasts or thighs and an egg, crushed cornflakes, some flour, the Brussels sprouts you halve, quarter, and you just put those in olive oil on your sheet pan. Then the hot honey mustard is salted butter, honey, Dijon, lemon juice, cayenne, chili, smoked paprika, chili powder, smoked paprika, garlic powder. So I think I can control kind of the heat on that. But you kind of braise that on, and it's just all done in a sheet pan. So I thought it sounded delicious. It is a half-baked harvest recipe. I do have that one of those cookbooks from Tegan. She is really fun to follow on Instagram because she cooks all the time. And I've talked about her before. But when I was typing up the recipe of the week, the sheet pan hot honey mustard chicken and crispy Brussels sprouts. Did you all know that Brussels sprouts got an S on the end of it? It's from Brussels in Belgium because that's where they became popular. But it's Brussels sprout, not Brussels sprouts. And I was like, I don't know if I've written it before on a recipe probably, but not paid close enough attention. And then I looked and I looked it up because I wanted to make sure I typed it right. It has an S on the end. I was like, wow, that's another thing I didn't know, Okay. The second recipe I just want to share because I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw these women making these Rice Krispie bars for an open house they were like realtors and they always serve them. And they spread out their peanut butter Rice Krispie mixture into a long, big sheet pan with parchment paper underneath it. And then they spread the chocolate on top and then they rolled it up like a log and then they sliced it like a cookie. I was like, what an easy way to pick that up and eat it and to make it in, they rolled it up real tight. I don't know how easy it's going to be to roll, but it is different than the recipe I make in some ways. So they use the marshmallows with the butter that and then they added peanut butter to it. And I use not marshmallows. Marshmallows are just sugar, right? So I use sugar. So I just thought that would be interesting. And then they mix their chocolate chips with butterscotch chips. And we've always done that. We've mixed our milk chocolate chips or semi-sweet with butterscotch chips. It makes us smoother, creamier. So anyway, that is an all recipe, and I will link it in the show notes. And also I will copy and paste it into the recipe section of the podcast on Ravelry. But the marshmallows, butter, and peanut butter together, I don't know if that will make it easier to roll. I'm assuming it will. So we'll see. Doesn't that sound good? I just can't make a whole pan of those right now. I'm trying to get myself off a little more sugar. I crave it every day. So I bought some new. Kylie took me to Costco yesterday because they have a membership. And I don't want a Costco membership. That we're going to get one closer to my house. So then I'll probably do it. But I'm bad with impulse control. Anybody else? And I go to Costco and then I buy all the things. I just want to buy all the things. And the proportions are so huge that with just the two of us at home, we just can't possibly eat all of that, especially some of the stuff that Ross won't even eat. Like the big bags of frozen vegetables, which I love. He doesn't like peppers and onions, and they put peppers and onions in everything. So you get this giant bag and then they're only for me. So anyway, she took me to Costco. I bought some lower sugar treats. So we got some granola bars. I got some trail mix. I got some coconut crisped roll up things that Bobby Flav talked about on Instagram, just to see if I could, I got no grain, no gluten, no whatever. Granola bars. We'll see. Ross is packing his lunch some days too, because they only have a cafeteria that's open for a few hours. It's a sandwich shop, so sometimes he misses lunch. So I said, well, you could take some of those and stick them in your drawer too. Anyway, so yeah, 2 recipes this week. Okay, I have a beautiful sweater to talk about, and we all need to give a little applause to my dear friend Stacy Knits. This is the Pinebank sweater, which I knit maybe 10 years ago. Nah, maybe not that long. And in the gauge just was quite off on the yoke of the actual, it came in a Malabrigo book, like a booklet with a bunch of Malabrigo patterns. And so you don't always get updates that way to figure it out. And the yoke numbers, I remember having to fudge them, having to figure them out. And the whole thing just was always a little too small. And I was smaller at the time. So it just never fit me well, but I always loved it. So I had my mom try it on, and it didn't fit her well either. And so her best friend lives across the street. My mom's been friends with her for 50 years. Her name's Irene, and she's been divorced for a number of years. And she has 2 sons that were just a little bit younger than me when we grew up, like a year or 2. But my mom and Irene walk all the time together. And Irene has had cancer for 20 years. She's been living with cancer. She gets chemo infusions, and she had to have radiation here, and so she has no saliva. I mean, it's just incredible. And she's super thin, but she's cold all the time. So I said to Mom, even though this might be a little, too big on her, I bet she would like the warmth of it. Well, she just loved it. So we gave it to Irene, which was lovely to give a sweater to someone who would really, appreciate that hug, but then would probably wear it all the time. And then I bought new yarn. And then there it sat. And I wound the yarn, and there it sat. And I just didn't want to knit it again. Like once I've knit something, unless I'm, going to make it and I want it to be a fast knit, I don't re-knit things that often. And I don't like to. I can, but I don't always like to. So I decided to ask Stacy, who's a sample knitter. I just asked her if she would sample knit it for me. And she did. And she knit it in like a week. And it's just lovely. But it's got button bands that are faced and folded back in pink. Isn't that gorgeous? And then 3/4 length sleeves with green. I mean, I just love this sweater. I don't have buttons for it yet. I need just a few buttons, and I might have the buttons that I had on Irene's. I might have more than one. I had one in each of the colors, and so I put the orange, the green, the pink, and the gold colors. This is all knitted Malabrigo. It's Profundo blue, and then it's glazed carrot, and Frank ochre, and fuchsia. What's the green? I know it. Anyway, so it's just lovely. Malabrigo Rios. It's a little bit longer. I asked her. The fact that she had none of my body there to make this. And then she would just text me and say, okay, I'm on the whatever. What do you want me to do with this? And I had sent her measurements and stuff. And then she just, and it fits perfectly. And I have like a green long sleeved lime green t-shirt that I usually wear under it. So I cannot wait to wear it this fall. I feel I'm a little spring here in the last 2 weeks with my pink, but it has been lovely here. We've just been having lovely weather, and comes in only like 4 sizes, if I remember right, maybe even 3. It's like small, medium, large, or small, medium, large, extra large. So beautiful, lovely sweater, but I had to have it re-knit, and I was just never going to knit it. And I cast on some other things, just ridiculous. Okay. The shawl of the week, I just draped this over as a scarf, but it is just lovely. And guess what? Also knit by Stacy. This is a sample knit that Stacy knit for someone else. And then when she gets some of her samples back after a while, they weren't her colors necessarily, or she doesn't want them or whatever. So she reached out and asked some of us if any of us would like some of these shawls or things that she knit that she got back as samples. And I was like, yes, because if I take them And I can talk about them on the podcast. So I had, you know, a couple of different shawls that Stacy had knit. This is a mini skein set, very graphic, garter stitch all the way down in these grays and blacks, which is not me at all, but I like bright color underneath. So with this graphic on top, it would be just lovely to wear around, and it's lovely yarn. So this is called the Mind Games Wrap by Sweater Freak. And I think this is Cloudborn yarn, Stacy, I think. I looked it up. And it's just one of those long, really nicely wearable because it's not too deep. You know, like some of them are so deep that you get them wrapped up around your neck and you're like, they're practically lifting your neck up because the depth of them, especially for me because I'm short. But yeah, so sometimes keeping them a little bit more narrow in their depth, but keeping them long allows you to wrap and wrap around your neck. And then you can also tie these ends in a knot to give you some weight so that when it's hanging down, or it will stay on better. So I'll put this back on the mannequin in a fashionable form. Okay, my neighbor decided to start mowing and we had the windows open, so I had to get up and close them, and it was really bothering me that I hadn't dressed the mannequin today. I just forgot, and I meant to do it. Usually I put something underneath. I probably should have put my green shirt under this one too. Whatever. So I dressed the mannequin quick because he was going back and forth right here, and I thought, okay, I've got a couple minutes while he finishes that little bit up. So the Mind Games Wrap by Sweater Freak came out in October of 2016. Fingering weight, knit on a size 5, takes about 1,000 yards of yarn, and it is 85 inches long and 9.5 inches deep. Okay. She has added an additional version to this shawl. So originally you were alternating skeins and making those chevrons, and now she turned it into a mini skein set. So there are two versions out there, just so that you know that the original one was alternating two skeins of fingering weight color in different colors, and then she added kind of the gradient look to it, so that's kind of nice. The pattern cost $7. There are 60 some versions out there, and it was she used Madeline Tosh Merino Light, and Stacy knit it as a sample. So yeah, I thought it was just really graphic, even though I'm not a gray fan, and most of the time I wouldn't kind of lean toward that. All right, so there you go, sweaters and the shawls of the week, and we have my finished objects, so we're done with that and the recipes. So I watched The Lion and the Wolf on Amazon Prime on a recommendation from someone in my knitting group. And then I started watching, I was like, oh my Lord, it's, there's a little bit of animal endangerment at, when lions at the circus. But the lion and the wolf become friends and they escape, and so the story was lovely. It was just a lovely movie eventually, but seeing how some people mistreat animals in the zoo or in a circus, that was a little bit hard. And then I watched Licorice Pizza. Anybody else watch that? It won a bunch of awards. It takes place in the 1970s, so all the fashion and the cars and all that which would have been kind of partly my decade when I was in high school, and it was terrible. This young kid, and he's kind of greasy, and he is like trying to kind of bamboozle people, but also have a business. He wants to be a big businessman. He meets this older woman, and that's weirdly off-putting. Anyway, I'm sure that there was some acting and photography that was amazing, but I didn't see it. So let's not spend any more time. And then I watched a new podcast to me called Alexandras Garn, and she did a tour of Swedish yarn shops. Barbro, if you haven't watched, you probably have already watched it, but yeah, it was really interesting to see that. So you can Google that on YouTube and see if you want to take a look at, she starts out with, there's a Swedish yarn shop tour for one of her posts. And then, did anybody else see this on Instagram? This is a cowl called Read Banned Books. And then, you know, I just gotta love a good banned book, right? Has anyone else taken a banned book list and crossed off all the ones they've read to make sure that they've read all the books? I'm just stickler that way, you know. But I thought the cowl and the fact that they look like they're on fire, I might have to knit that. Kylie would probably love that too. Actually, I have a number of people in my life who would probably like that. So that's by Dr. Llama, Dr._Llama on Instagram. And I went out and looked at it and copied off the picture. I just thought that was pretty cool. Some things I have to tell you today. I gave away a skein of yarn on Instagram. I posted that picture of Cody, where there was a piece of yarn coming from my chair to underneath him, and it looked like he was attached to it. So I said, caption this. And I don't know if I really ever announced that to everyone here, and I might have, but I couldn't find it in my notes. So I thought, oh, I better do it again. So Ms. Elani, did I already share that? Maybe I did. I sent her a skein of yarn because her caption for that picture, and I will try to put the picture here. Her caption was, I just thought it was a new leash on life. And with Cody having cancer, that just meant a lot to me. It was cool. It was a good caption for that. So anyway, I just want to always follow through. Someone on the podcast gave me $15 in my Ko-fi account, K-O-F-I, coffee account. And it was, I think that's what happened. I got back to her and I was like, thank you so much. That was, you know, that was a lot and maybe not necessary to send me, or maybe it was on PayPal. Anyway, I said, you know what? I will pay that forward. And so I sent out 3 patterns because it doesn't cost me any money to gift a pattern. So I thought I can pay that forward, make someone's day. So I went through the comments 2 shows ago and just random number generator and then counted down and gave away 3 patterns to Dab 32, Val the Rizzle, and SVM Moten, just out there. And I contacted them and said, hey, you want a pattern? And they chose one of my patterns and then I gifted that. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the fact that someone gave me a gift and I kind of sent that forward in some way. It was just it just felt good. I'm a huge gifter. If you haven't been around long enough to know that, if I get to know you for even a little bit and I see something that I think you want or need, I'm all over that. So I also, when I was talking about Stacy sample knitting and then me literally paying for the sweaters to be knit, I bought 2 shawls from my friend Janet Overman, who is getting rid of all her stash. Janet has a health thing going on and she is dispersing all of her stash in many of her samples. So she put up a bunch of shawls. And if you want to support someone who needs to get rid of all of that, it is my Sable, S-A-B-L-E, yarns.com. I've talked about it before. Some of you went and got yarn from her. She has hand spun. Her prices are pretty reasonable, and I will be talking about 3 of the shawls that I purchased from her because they looked like they had interesting constructions or something going on. And so I thought, well, okay. So I got 3 different shawls that I will be sharing on the podcast. And then I want to say thank you to Knittingrammie. That's Jane, who sent me some of her Abracadabra yarn. That's the color changing yarn that goes from white to purple. And I got it in the mail and I sat down this morning. I had it and I took it. We were driving to church and I was going to finish up the top of that hat. I only had a little bit left. Do you think I can figure out where I am at in my own hat pattern? I'm on the decreases and they're They're very decorative, the top of that Friendship Road hat, and they kind of swirl on both sides. And on one side I had knit 3 and on the other side I had knit 4. And so I don't know how I got off or what I was doing, but I just couldn't figure out what I said to Ross. I can't even knit my own pattern. Anyway, so I thank you, Jane, for sending me. She sent me way more than I needed, but it was lovely to have someone step up and say, hey, I have some of that, and you know, I will send it to you. And then I offered to pay her, and she said, absolutely not. And I said, I will pass that on, that lovely gift. And then I just want to give a little shout out to the fact that I'm going to Watertown, South Dakota on Friday, and I'm teaching Friday night, Saturday 2 classes, and Sunday 1 class. My Sunday afternoon class got canceled because they didn't have enough people sign up, which I'm kind of glad about, actually, because it's going to be a long weekend for me, and I have some to talk to you about my health. But I will be going on Friday afternoon, so if anybody's going, I want to meet you all while you're there. There's a lot of classes being offered, tons of classes. And if you're just hearing about this and you didn't know and you're in that area, if you're near or around Watertown, South Dakota, or western Minnesota, even North Dakota, you could come south, or a corner of Iowa, that wouldn't be that far either, Minnesota. So, but yeah, I'll be there all weekend, and that will be teaching 4 different times, so I'll be exhausted coming home on Sunday. Then the following weekend, I'm teaching for Floxsie, Floxsie, and I am teaching Latvian braids, and I'm doing a little talk on Ravelry. But I wanted to say they had a sale over the Labor Day, and they are discounting some of their classes. That is a virtual event. Anybody can go to it. They have a vendor market where the vendors come out and show their wares, and you can purchase things from them. And then they have teachers, and then they have workshops. So there are classes that you pay for, and then there are workshops. So if you buy a package, and the $12.50 gets you the marketplace and all the demos. And they have knit nights, Thursday and Friday night maybe. That is September 22nd through the 24th. I'm teaching Saturday afternoon and doing my demo on Ravelry later in the day, but that's a really good price to get into something that you get to be a part of for multiple days. And then you can sign up for however many classes you want, and you can go to all the things. So if you are a person who does not have a local, conference, convention, have never been able to travel and go, and you are looking for that, they are also going to have another one in November and one in February, I believe. They do an amazing job of technology. Really, really helpful to people. They will walk you through it. They will help out the teachers. They will help out people in the class. Every class has a helper. I just really think that they're doing a nice job of trying to provide content for people who can't get to events or aren't comfortable going to in-person events. So I just wanted to shout that out because I saw the price was $12.50 for the marketplace and all the demos, and I thought, wow, that's amazing. I mean, even if you can only go to a couple of things, that's kind of nice. I mean, some of these conferences are, $400, $500, $600 just to get in the door, let alone for your classes. So I just thought that was something that I should highlight. Okay. All right. Let's do Cori's stories, and then we'll do the books at the end. I am having a hip replacement on September 28th, first thing in the morning. I am not excited, but we got it all settled. I went and had my pre-surgical appointment. I go to see the physical therapist this week for an hour-long talk. We discuss whether or not I want crutches or a walker, and my pain management for afterwards and my recovery. And Ross and I are going to do the same thing we did when I had my knee replacement in 2018. Trio Orthopedics in the Twin Cities has a hotel across the street, the Hilton, and you can recover there. So you have your surgery in the morning, and then I have a block, so there's not a lot of pain. And then my husband pulls up and he drives me across the street to the Hilton, and I have a wheelchair, and they take me up to the 4th floor, And then you just stay in the hotel overnight, and you have a nurse on call, but you're not in a hospital setting. So they're not coming in and taking your blood pressure and drawing blood and waking you up. And there's not beeps and whistles that go out all night long. You're in a literal hotel room. And last time our room was connected to the nurse, and then there were a couple other people that were across the hall. So I don't know if I'll be like connected or across the hall, and she stays there, and she monitors your meds, keeps you pain-free, talks you through, gets you to the bathroom your first time that you have to do that. And then Ross is just there with me, but he doesn't have to provide 100% of the care, right? And he gets to sleep in a hotel bed. We both have our own beds. They have ice. They had, an ice machine sleeve that they put on and took off. There was a recliner in the corner that I could sit in or sleep in. And that you order food right there from the hotel. It was just a great experience. And I had the option. Some people just go home after the hip, and some people opt to stay. And I could have come home. I'm not worried, but I just thought for Ross's sake, like, he has had to take care of me. I've had 4 surgeries since 2018. It's just a lot for him, right? And he keeps all my meds straight, and he writes things down, and when he gives me medication, all that, but it's just a lot. And so, I just decided it would be better. And I told her that. I said, I'm perfectly capable of getting home. But if you have a really uncomfortable night, or if you have nausea or whatever, then the nurse is there. You don't have to wake your husband up and be like, you have to help me, with anything. So I'll be going to the Hilton overnight, and then we'll go home the next day if everything goes well. It's a couple week recovery before you go in and have your, stitches and everything removed. So showering and all that's kind of a pain, but we've done it before, and I'm super glad I can get it fixed. I'm really tired of being in pain. Yesterday, just walking at Costco with Kylie, and then we went out to dinner afterwards. We met the guys, and we got out of Costco, and she's like, well, we have a little time. Do you want to go to Kohl's? And we were sitting in the front seat of my car, and I said, I can't. Like, I can't walk anymore. It hurts and whatever. And then I take medication, and that upsets my stomach. So I'm just done. I'm just ready. Just let's do it. Get it done. I got to get this fixed. And it accelerated pretty quickly. I'm currently walking with a cane. I can drive. Sitting is not a problem, but it just standing and walking, anyway, gets fatigued. So I will have that fixed on the 28th, and then I will be good to go for a while. But Ross and I still went to Mackinac. So Kylie and Stevie got engaged on Mackinac in August, and they came home and they loved it. And I was so worried about them, thinking that it was, an old people's vacation. But they talked about it so much, and then we got sad, and we had gone in 2018. And so I said to Ross, maybe we should go. And he called, and they were full. And then he called the next day, and they had openings. And it was just lovely. It was just, the weather was perfect. We drove over. It's about a 9-hour drive. I mean, we get there in about 9 hours, but then we lose an hour time zone wise. So it's a long day, but Ross drives the whole way, and I knit. It was fine, and it's beautiful. We're driving along, we get across Wisconsin, and we're driving along the lake the whole way. I've talked about Mackinac before. We stayed at the Grand Hotel. They have a jazz weekend. It's kind of an all-inclusive resort situation. So it's quite expensive, but you get a 4-course formal. You have to dress for dinner. There's a huge breakfast buffet in the morning, but you can also order off the menu, or you can go to the buffet and order off the menu. Incredible. Just lovely food. And then because it was this weekend, they had barbecues on the front lawn. So they were barbecuing ribs and brisket, and the smells were just amazing. And we didn't need to eat. We had just had giant breakfast. And they had a whole tent full of desserts. And it was lovely. And we're not huge jazz aficionados, but some of you will be. And so we got in because I can't walk, right? I'm using the cane. So we got in the taxi, which is horse-drawn, and we were in one of the old-fashioned carriages, which look like a stagecoach, kind of, right? They're a little bit longer. They're for transporting people up the hill. Some of them are like just a flat, kind of more of a flatbed situation with seats, like a tram, with like open sides. You can hop on and off. But this was, and we got in, and then a gentleman came behind us, and then another couple. And we take off, and Ross notices that the guy has a saxophone sitting there. And so he says, "Are you playing this weekend?" And the guy's like, "Yes, I am." And then this woman that was the other couple said, "Oh, you know, what's your name and what do you play and whatever." And then he said, "You know, I play saxophone." And Ross said, "Oh, where are you from?" And he said, "Well, I guess I should say I'm now from Austin because I just moved there a month ago. But previously I was the head of jazz studies at Michigan State." And then the lady asked, and he said that he was the Diego Rivera Quintet. And it doesn't ring any bells for them or us. And then we get to the hotel later, and he's the poster boy, right? Like, he is the poster. He's the Saturday night guy. He's the head of the band. He's the professional 5-album saxophonist, lovely man, who is now the head of jazz studies in Austin at University of Texas. And they moved there. They went down to look for a house in May. And he happens to be Chicano and a person of color. And he talked about that when we went to his performance on Saturday night. He talked about how we are not doing well by our children. And they moved there, or went to look there on the day of the Uvalde shootings. And can you imagine moving your family with your children and being a person of color and moving to Texas on that day? That it reminded Ross and I so much of when we moved to Virginia the week after 9/11. It uproots your whole belief system and what you're doing and where you're going, and is this a good idea? So he talked about that. He talked about how in the 1940s, the United States opened up the borders to Mexico and said, "Come, we need you to come," because we did not have enough people. Our men were all fighting. We were losing people, and his family came. They came to America to be a part of the American dream, and we wanted them. We welcomed them, and then it has been a struggle ever since. We've been mad about it. I mean, I'm not mad about it, but people in our country have been mad about it. And so it was peppered. His performance was peppered with these little stories, and then the music he composed and why he composed the songs and what they were about. And then you could imagine, as you're listening to them, the story that and I'm not a big drum solo fan, right? Not my thing. I was not a rock and roll queen. My brother loved like rock, right? Like, and some of that harder stuff when I was growing up. Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Kiss, like, right? The man who did the drum solo for this quintet I have never heard drums like that. He was an African-American professor of percussion jazz studies in Indiana. And he played faster than I have ever seen someone play drums, and slower. He made a song, like, it was incredible. I don't know enough about jazz, right? Like, I don't know the theory. I don't read music well enough. Like, I played piano, but I don't understand that half beats and all the things that he explains before they perform each song. It was just a treat. It was just a treat. Then he said to us, we said, well, we were last here in 2018. And then he said, who did you hear? Who was here that year? And we couldn't remember, which is ridiculous. But so I'm Googling as we're going up the hill to the hotel. And then I look and I see the name, and then I tell him, and he's like, he's my friend. I could have played with him this weekend at Detroit. He said the same day that we booked this, our first time ever being the featured show here, a couple of hours later, he called, and they were doing Jazz Weekend in Detroit, and I could have played with him, and he said I would have loved that. So, and Detroit is just huge in the jazz scene. Ross's best friend lived in Detroit for a number of years and just loved jazz. So, and then the woman I can't pronounce her last name, was an African-American jazz singer. She was out on the front lawn under a big tent on Saturday afternoon, and she won the Grammy for Best Jazz Album in like 2016, 18, 19, something like that, like 3 or 4 years. So it's amazing, and it's all included, right? All the music, all the food. They redid the whole pool area. They have a water slide, and they have an infinity pool for adults. And like, what did he tell us when we checked in? Like, they keep I won't get these right, but they keep the regular pool at 70 and the adult pool at 80 and the hot tubs at 90, whatever the numbers were. And then they have a new gym down there by the pool, workout area. So Ross worked out, he ran, he walked, he rode around the island 2 different days. The island is 8.2 miles around, and you can rent bicycles, and there are no cars on the island. If you've never been and you live in the upper Midwest, so you can drive, you have to go. There are lots of places to stay. You do not have to stay at the Grand Hotel, but you can take a tour of the Grand Hotel. You take a ferry over to the island, you park your car. There are 3 ferry services. You park your car and then you go over. You can go over for the day. And there are just horses everywhere. And so if there are horses everywhere, right? Like, we're a horse family. There's horse poop everywhere, right? And they have people cleaning up all the time. I don't ever remember, for the 3 days we were there, I don't think I ever saw a pile, ever. Like, they have shovels and like big wheelbarrow things that men come out and they scoop it away and it's gone, and they hose down. It's incredible. And then you hear the clap, 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 clap of the horses' hooves everywhere, and they're big horses. It's the biggest working horse stable in the world, these big horses, and they're considered the people who drive all of the stuff, like all the stuff that comes in on the barges and the ships and the ferries has to be hauled by horse. And they are considered circus workers because it's an animal thing. I don't know. And their wages have gone down because of the COVID and the pandemic and stuff. But talking to those people, the guy that we rode with one day, he's been driving the horses for like 26 years. He lives on the island. That's what he does all day. He gets up at 4 a.m. and he's done at 8 at night every day, all summer long. And they do have horses in the winter. They do have snowmobiles on the island in the winter. Sometimes the horses just can't get through. But yeah, it's an incredible place. There's lots of tours. There's a fort. You can bike. Like I said, you don't have to bike the whole way. Ross went Saturday and Sunday. And the bikes are not like, you can take your bike on the ferry. So if you're a bike person, but the bikes are not that you rent are just, 3 speed. So it's an exercise to get around the island, right? There's hiking. There's lots of stuff to do. I did walk downtown with Ross. We walked super slow. And round trip, it's 1.5 miles, but we stopped at some shops. We were looking for a painting. We wanted to get some type of artwork there are artists on the island who set up, canvases everywhere, and they sell their wares. And we just kind of wanted to get some type of painting, but we didn't find, there was watercolor and then there were acrylic. And the one that we found that we loved was just tiny, and we wanted something a little bigger. So we're going to get in touch with that lady and see if she has she does have other pieces. She just didn't have any. But salted caramel ice cream and fudge. There were fudge makers. So I'm going to put video in of our ferry ride over the Mackinac Island Bridge. Closes on Labor Day. So from 8 or 6 in the morning till noon, and you can walk across it. So if you are a walker and you want like a destination, you can stay on that side. So Mackinac City is at one end of the bridge, and St. Ignace or St. Agnes, it's Ignace, but it kind of depends on your accent, how you say it, is on the other end. So if you need to go home the Michigan side, you have to go back over to Mackinac City on Monday morning. Because you can't get across the bridge until noon, or you have to go back to St. Ignace. So we saw people going to walk, and I said, Russ, you should walk it. And he's like, yeah, we should walk it sometime. We should just stay. But we needed to get home because we hadn't planned ahead and taken more time off. But so we were there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We spent one night up in the cupola, which is the very tippy top of the Grand Hotel, and it's a little bar area, and there's a giant glass chandelier, just beautiful geranium glass, hand blown, I assume, chandelier that hangs down into the floor of the next level. And so it's just this little intimate bar, and there's like a little piano player in the corner, and he was doing Billy Joel and Elton John, and he was singing and playing the piano, and then he has a little sing-along with some of the more popular songs. And there are like couches, bench seats with big pillows all the way around. It's super romantic and intimate and just lovely. You can get, you know, drinks up there and food. They'll bring food up for you. And then we're looking out, and there were fireworks in Mackinac City, and we were up at the, you know, we could see them, and they were going on. Oh, it was lovely. It was beautiful. We took a nap on Sunday afternoon. I don't remember ever in the last, I don't even know how many years, napping with my husband, like laying on side by side on a bed. He will lay on the couch on the porch, and I will lay in my recliner if we're ever going to nap. But like, he laid down, and then I was like, I should stretch my leg out, because sometimes I just need to lay flat. And he's like, I'm going to take a nap. And I was like, I don't know if I'll fall asleep. We both fell asleep. You know, fresh air. It was lovely. Food is amazing. You get 4 courses every night. So you have your soup, you have your little appetizer, and everything's very small. So you're not like stuffed after by the time you have salad. So you get this tiny little plate with a little appetizer, and then you get a little cup of soup, and then you get a little salad, and then you get your entree, and then you can opt for dessert. They have lovely desserts. And there are like 4 menus, and they're on cardstock. They're cream, and then they're bordered with red, green, yellow, and pink. So you can, and then they rotate. And then you have probably 4 choices for each thing, and then maybe 6 choices for entree, and then there's always a vegetarian entree. So you're not eating the same thing unless you stay for a long period of time. It was just great. It was just, I love geraniums. I've loved them since the very first time we went over there, because the entire Grand Hotel is, you know, the whole porch, the entire length is geraniums, and the 10 American flags, giant American flags, on this white wood building, the biggest wooden structure. They built it in 93 days back in the day. Ross read that. And they had to get all the lumber and all the stuff over there, and all the windows, and oh my gosh. So yes, it's worth a trip for anybody to go, and it's right there. It's like a 15-minute ferry ride. It doesn't cost a lot. I think the ferry to go over and back is, per person, is $20 maybe, and they take your luggage, and they ship your luggage to where you're going. You know, like you check it in. Yeah, the whole thing is just, it's a lovely experience. There's not a yarn store on the island, but I did find yarn in a gallery. There's a basket of yarn, and a local lady who has a farm had yarn there. But I could see in my retirement living on Mackinac having a yarn store and having all the tourists come and buy yarn for me. Oh, it's such a romantic. It's hard working there. People work long, hard hours. The young people that work there serve from morning until night. It used to be that they only really had Haitian men in the dining room, in the grand dining room. They would come up for a season, so they would work from May until end of September, and they would do all the shifts. So they would just work, morning, noon and night serving. But now they have a much more diverse staff, and there were people from all over. But one of our taxi drivers said it's really hard to get people that want to work that hard. They get their room, they get their board, so they can live on the island for the summer, and then they get paid. And they get paid anywhere from $10 to $15 an hour. But they're also getting their room and board. But it's hard, right? It's hard work. Like, you could make good money, and you're getting your food and all of that, but your way from home. And one of the ladies, I said, you know, when do you get to go home? And she said September 7th. And I said, where's home? And she said Taiwan. But I mean, there are people from all over. And the one guy served us a dessert off his head. He was a African-American guy with like a kind of a short haircut, and he set one of like the fanciest dessert at the table, and then he would come down. I mean, like the tables are not that far apart, and they're carrying huge trays and, you know, whatever. And the first night somebody crashed and burned off to the side, and everything fell. And he bent down, and you had to take your little we never had him again, but it was super fun. People clapped and cheered, and then one of the bands, they play music during dinner, and the band played God Bless America, and people started waving their napkins, like waving their napkins over their head, and I saw it coming, and we were far enough away from the band that it was just really soft background, but I didn't hear what they were playing. And then you saw more and more people pick up their white napkins, and they were swinging them over their head, and then people were and they were just singing softly, and I was like, what's going on? And is that a thing? Like, do you wave a napkin, or were people just being patriotic in that moment? It was the last set of the night, and they were going to stop playing, and so they played that, and then that whole thing happened, and I was like, wow, is that something I didn't know? So we had a lovely trip. I saw Kylie yesterday, and I said, I needed you to shop with me because Dad's not much of a shopper. And I kind of wanted to shop, but I had to stop and rest all the time and just rest my leg. It would just, when it catches. And she's like, okay, Stevie and I will go with you. We'll go back next year. She said, we'll stay somewhere cheap. And you guys can stay at the Grand Hotel, and then I'll shop with you, and Stevie and Dad can ride their bikes and hike and do all the physical things. So I said, God, I'm hoping by then I'm riding a bicycle or hiking around the island. But yeah, it's just a special place. Tell me in the comments if you have a special, special place in your heart that might not be special to everyone else, but that you've been, or when you go there, you remember, you know, you just have super fond memories. Yeah, I'd love to know. Okay. I did a little post this weekend on Instagram. I will read it to you. Some of you saw it and already commented, but I was having this thought about people who say, oh gosh, I tried knitting and I just can't do it, or I don't have the patience, or it's too hard, or whatever. And so this is what I wrote. How many of us have heard someone say, I tried knitting, I just couldn't do it, or I don't have the patience for knitting? I think you have to go toward knitting. Knitting doesn't come to you. Like many things, it needs some energy, some desire. How did you learn? Not abracadabra, I'll bet. You tried often, made mistakes, ripped things out, continued on. But honestly, the bottom line is you just didn't give up. And I think sometimes when people say, oh, I tried knitting and I just couldn't do it, what they're really saying is, I just gave up, right? Like if you want to get good at anything, it takes practice and energy, but it also takes the I want to do it motivation, right? Like if you want to do it bad enough, you will do it. And if you don't have that desire in you, it isn't that you couldn't do it. You just gave up. Right? Whatever it is in life. And so people have been writing to me about how they learned, like, this is how I learned, this is how I learned. But not many people are writing about, do you agree that people who just can't get knitting, they're just not working hard enough, right? Like they're just giving up. They're just not trying again. It's not that they couldn't do it or can't do it, or that's too hard, because if it was too hard, none of us would do it. Yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking about it, and I thought, gosh, you just have to go to it. You just have to go to it again and again. You have to want it. You have to go toward it. It doesn't just come and plop itself in your lap and say, here you go, right? Now you can knit. I don't know. I was just thinking about that. So anyway, I have a post out on Instagram about that. Let's go over the books, and then I've got about 2 minutes before the Vikings play. and I want to watch the game. So, okay, the first book is The Bookshop of Second Chances by Jackie Fraser. Thea Mottram is having a bad month as she's been let go from her office job with no notice, and to make matters even worse, her husband of nearly 20 years has decided to leave her for one of her friends. Bewildered and completely lost, Thea doesn't know what to do, but when she learns that a distant great uncle in Scotland has passed away, leaving her his home and a hefty antique book collection, she decides to leave Sussex for a few weeks. Excellent story, romance, lovely characters, Scotland, books, great uncle. You know, it was a lovely book. I did really like it. Then I read The Kiss Quotient, and that is by Helen Hoang. And Stella Lane thinks math is the only thing that unites the universe. She comes up with algorithms to predict customer purchases, a job that has given her more money than she knows what to do with, as well as way less experience in the dating department than the average 30-year-old. It doesn't help that she has Asperger's and that French kissing reminds her of shark getting its teeth cleaned by pilot fish. So she is awkward on the spectrum, autism, and it's a lovely story. Naughty, very naughty. There's a lot of sex that happens, and descriptive, because she has trouble with touch. I did really like it, but I just want to give you that warning. It gets a little graphic in a way. And a little shockingly so, because it's not a bodice ripper front page, right? So yeah, it was good. Then I finished Finding Me by Viola Davis. That's her autobiography. Man, did that woman have a tough life. That was a struggle, and it was very good. I would definitely recommend it. And then the last one before we close is that Ross and I listened to The Woman in the Library by Sulari Gentill on our trip, and we didn't like it, but we couldn't not stop listening. Like we couldn't stop. It was weird. It was quirky. There are 4 people. They're in a library. They hear a scream. A woman screams. They don't know what's going on. And the preface of the book says that one of the 4 is the murderer. But then it takes turn after turn after turn, and you cannot figure out how they're going to come together. And then she tries to get you to think that it's someone, so then you know it's not that person. And very quirky, very weird. Lots of characters that could be a part of the mystery. We ended up liking it, and both agreed that we couldn't not know who it was in the end, but it was like a quirky read and kind of different than what we normally listen to. Okay, so those are the audiobooks this week. I'm going to go watch the game. We will see you next time. Thanks for all of your lovely comments on last time's podcast. I got amazing comments from people that just nice conversations and well wishes, and yeah, it like totally warms my heart. Cody's going crazy because there's a dog outside, so we barked. But I really appreciate that you all watch each and every week, and so I thank you for that. And your time is worth something, and that you choose to spend it with me is just really nice. So. No green bananas. Waddle on. Buy the gravy. You'll never regret ripping back. Don't complain with your mouth full. Keep it colorful. Keep your fork. And to close, look at this darling sticker I got from Redbubble. Keep calm and waddle on. I will be sharing a few of these with some of you. I bought 4. I thought it was so cute. Love you all. Come in for your hug. Bye.